Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. You got to hit the unmute button if you want to go live, don't you? Today is June the 17th. I welcome you to the Kyle Seraphin Show, where we embrace the uncomfortable truths. We don't hang out in comforting lies. That's not what we are about here. And I was kind of interested. We've got that intro reel. We've been running it for a long time now, running it over a year, I think, something in that range when I created this intro reel. It's got some of the highlights. If you've never seen our Rumble show live, if you're only an Apple listener or Spotify, iHeartRadio, so on, you've probably never seen that we have this highlight reel. I call it the Bonafides reel of all these folks that are kind of going out there and saying their piece, right? We've got Sheila Jackson Lee talking to Chris Wray. And she says, are you familiar with FBI agents, plural, yes, Kyle Seraphin? And he says, I'm familiar with the name. What does that even mean? She didn't ever ask him, why are you familiar with the name? She goes on to just say some sort of lies about what we were doing and about what we were doing with money and this kind of thing. It's very interesting that our government is very comfortable lying to us, that they're comfortable kind of pushing the envelope when it comes to mistruths. And unfortunately, a lot of our conservative media is happy to do the same when it is convenient for them. You've got this little clips of folks like Seb Gorka out there, Tucker Carlson, Dan Bongino in our little highlight reel. Some of them have kind of turned on us, haven't they? And that's because we're comfortable working in the discomfort. One of the things that I learned how to do in the military, one of the things that I really embraced was what we call the suck. Some of you guys know about the suck. The suck is when it's not good. And we just keep doing it. Eventually, you get to the other end of it. The one thing that I had over all of the young guys that I trained in, I went to Pararescue Indoc, which is a difficult course. I went through the Combat Control Selection and Operator course, and those are difficult courses. And the thing that I had over the young guys with me, and many of you have as well, and I want to remind you of this strength that you have before we get into today's show. The strength is that every single horrible, difficult day and week that you have ever experienced in your life has come to an end, or it will come to an end, or you will die. Either way, it doesn't last forever. There is an impermanence to the human experience. That's why Christians can look forward to something better. And it's why those of us that have experienced hardship can compare it to something else. And it turns down the volume on the stupidity that is going on around us. We've got a really full show today. And I mean that like I've jam-packed it with more. I've actually kind of like skated around the edges of what the topics look like because I've got so much to cover down. And I want to give you kind of a taste of what that's going to be. Today, we're going to be talking about using lies to try to protect the truth. And timely enough, just before we went live today, I want to actually read this from our little chat thread. The suspendables, I've got multiple suspendables threads here. One of them just came in from George Hill, and he's quoting a fake quote from the FBI. Says that in order to protect your freedoms, we're going to need to take your freedoms. And I said, it's our topic of the day. In order to protect the truth, we must tell you lies. All right? If people are willing to tell you and must tell you lies in order for you to do the thing that they want, they are not on the side of truth. And that's all we care about here. If we're not going to do it honestly, and if we're not going to do it for the right reasons, if we're not going to go forward in righteousness for its own sake, I want nothing to do with it. Which is why you'll find that my team is always Team Truth. It's Team Suspendable. It's people who are willing to do the right thing for the right reason. And if that means that you lose some friends along the way, I lost 14,000 armed friends with the FBI. I can lose a few friends. I don't want to. And I know many of you feel the same way. That's why you listen to this program. I'm really grateful for your listenership. And I'm also aware that you don't agree with everything I say. And that's also part of the story here in America. We used to know how to agree to disagree. It's like, look, I can't get behind that one. I see what you're saying, but it doesn't convince me. And that's fine. That actually used to be the way we did things. We were a much more proper country at that time. Before we get deep into the weeds here, I do want to say thanks to the folks that back us up and give us the ability to say whatever it is that we think is true. Me, you, the Suspendables, we say it. Go to patriotcoolers.com if you want to support our friends over there. They are making fantastic coolers. I just got a picture of George Hill's new 50-quart hard-sided rotomolded cooler sitting on a park bench, hanging out, doing some camping. If you guys want an outstanding outdoor product that's going to last for a very long time, and a funny little moment, I just grabbed down my water cooler, which I just showed you, the tumbler, and I pulled it out of the cabinet, and there was water in there. So I don't know if my wife or I stowed it while it was still operational, but yes, that's you can do that, and it's still proof, so it didn't spill anywhere in the cabinet. Good deal. Promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. It's 4 little letters. It is my first name. K-Y-L-E will save you 10% when you go to patriotcoolers.com at checkout and pick up a new customized tumbler, customized coffee cup, or maybe you want one of the big ones like a backpack, the soft-sided coolers. I actually used the soft-sided one taking my kids down to get shoes this weekend, and I was like, oh, you know what I don't want? Warm apple juice in the Texas sun. I threw in some ice, tossed them in the soft-sided cooler, and rolled out in the front seat, and it worked great. So there's a lot of different uses for these products, and you guys can check them out. All right, so that's what we got. Let's get deep into this. I've got some videos. I've got a bunch of stories to cover down on. And topic number one right now, we hit it a little bit. I actually know a little bit more about it now. The story of the bump stock ban and the overturning is many, many layered, and it's worth us being honest about it. Number one, the bump stock ban came in under the Trump administration. So it is one of the strikes against liberty that we can see from Donald Trump's administration the first time around. I am hopeful that Don Jr. has more input when it comes to gun stuff if he gets another shot at it. But this was a bad one, and it was kowtowing to people on the political left right in the wake of the Las Vegas shooting, which there's a bunch of questions about, and I don't have any answers for you. I'm sorry. I don't know. I didn't work that case, and I don't have any friends that are willing to talk about it that did. But when it comes to what happened then, is America lost their minds, and they said, this was really, really dangerous. I actually think that if a bump stock was used and that rate of fire, it probably saved some of the lives because you could have taken a lot more lives in a very, very scary way. And I've explained this to other people. Maybe I'll do it in another show. But I think if there was a bump stock being used up there, shooting down, then it probably saved lives because the sound of automatic weapon fire or things that simulate automatic weapon fire with a high rate of fire, a turnover where the trigger is being activated over and over again, it is very distinct, and it's different than punctuated single gunshots, which could disappear in the sound of a loud concert, especially if that guy was really good at what he did. Turns out that's not what happened. A lot of people lost their lives. There was a massive overreaction. And even the NRA said, give them the bump stocks, we're going to cede this ground. The answer should always be never give any ground about your personal liberties. So here's Mike Cargill. He is the gun store owner here in Austin, Texas. He was the guy that I took my first CHL class from. And Mike Cargill also gets it, that not 1 inch is what we can give when it comes to our civil liberties. That includes speaking, that includes our assembly, and that specifically includes any of the technologies that are not written up by law, and they should all be taken down, by the way. I think all of the infringements on the Second Amendment are a problem. But he's talking about how they won a little bit, and then we're going to talk about what it means in a broader context, because there's actually a lot more than bump stocks at play right now. What there is a strike against the Administrative Procedures Act and the Chevron Doctrine, which is really important when it comes to broader conservative context. So kudos to this man, Mike Cargill. He is the owner of Central Texas Gunworks. If you live in the Austin area, a free plug, Central Texas Gunworks is my favorite gun store to go to. Now I live up near Liberty Hill, which is on the far, far north side, and I go to some folks that are called Watermark Arms. They're really good people as well. They're gun nerds, and they get it, and they're really good people. But if you're down on the south side or you live near downtown Austin, go see Mike. Support his business because he put it all on the line when it comes to financially backing this lawsuit. And yeah, other people got behind it, but he knew that it was important to put his name to it. And he's claimed that he's got 50 death threats since that ruling came in. So support his business. And by the way, a death threat to Mike Cargill is basically like a suicide, cry for help, because he's a military veteran. He was in law enforcement as part of the military. He was a military police officer, and he owns a freaking gun store. He's also like a really, really kind of like a brick shithouse of a man. He's seriously dense. You guys will see on this video right here. So here's Mike Cargill talking about the victory.
Breaking news. I did it. Michael Cargill versus Merrick Garland. The Department of Justice, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the bump stock lawsuit. I beat him in the United States Supreme Court. I was told over 5 years ago, why are you going down this road? No one cares about bump stocks. Let's go ahead and let them take the bump stock. But instead, I stood and fought. And because of this, the bump stock case is going to be the case that saves everything. It's going to stop the ATF from coming after their brace, the triggers, all different parts and pieces that they're trying to ban. And I'm glad I stood up and fought. So now we have a case that is case law that we can move forward around this country and defend our Second Amendment rights. As always, more guns equals less crime. You go out there and you buy yourself a gun. Better yet, get yourself a bump stock.
All right. I don't know if any of you are going to go out and buy some bump stocks, but I don't hate the idea of it. Look, bump stocks specifically are not an issue. They are using a technique known as bump firing, which can be done manually. This is actually brought up in the opinion of the court. I want to dissect a little bit of this, because if you don't understand what was at stake, Mike did. And the brilliance of what they did was they pitted the argument of the government against the actual law as written that defines what a machine gun is. All right? That's what's critical. Because what is written in law and what is written in so-called executive agency rules, they cannot be at odds with each other. And in this case, there was. There was a second thing that's like what's called ex post facto, which is to say writing a rule that goes back in time and it criminalized an act that was already not criminal. And that's a real problem. You can't hold people accountable for that. So you're either supposed to grandfather them in. They didn't do that. The ATF massively overstepped. Under Trump, let's be real about it. It doesn't matter, but he did celebrate this. So it is a small thing that we need to be aware that Trump on the Second Amendment is not great. And this was a big, big loss. In fact, there are people in the gun community that think this is one of the biggest missteps that he ever took. Here's what I want you to understand. What the court decided was that the government was arguing for a thing called rate of fire. That is the speed at which bullets fly out of the end of the barrel, that you can actually initiate the primer and cause the explosion that goes on inside the casing, sends a projectile downrange. That's the rate of fire. And the number of times that happens per second or per minute is usually the way we classify this. They were making this argument, and they did so in the Supreme Court, that the rate of fire is the definition of machine gun. When in fact, statutorily, there is a very specific, and it has nothing to do with rate of fire. In fact, if you had a weapon system that loaded at an incredibly low rate, let's say 1 time per 10 seconds, 1 time per 1 minute, and you were able to pin the trigger to the rear and it would load, fire, and then slowly begin the process of loading another bullet and then firing again, that would be considered a machine gun, even though it is only firing 1 time per 10 seconds, 1 time per minute. However, if every single time that you fire a bullet down range, the trigger function has to be moved manually, and that can be done through inertia, it can be done through a push-pull mechanism, it can be done through a device like a bump stock or a forced reset trigger. If there is an engineering solution that allows you to pull the trigger at a faster rate, then you get into the situation where they have to look and decide, what does it actually mean to be a machine gun? And the statute says it turns on whether a weapon can fire more than 1 shot, quote, automatically by a single function of the trigger. Now, they left this thing open, and the additional sort of supporting decisions also state that Congress can go back in and define a machine gun by rate of fire should they so choose. But it did not. And so this actually is going to be a protection for things like forced reset triggers, which I just mentioned. That is an engineering device that allows you to pull the trigger on any weapon system, but generally speaking, we're talking about AR pattern rifles. You pull the trigger and it pushes forward by the cycling of the weapon. It actually pushes the trigger back forward so that you can cycle it again, not automatically, but with another function of the trigger, but it pushes it into a place where you are simply going to have increased positive pressure to the rear, and it'll always pull a new function of the trigger. So people are looking at the definition of machine gun, and they are decidedly skirting around it. The bigger implication, as Mike just talked about, he actually discussed in a little podcast video talking about the EPA and the Administrative Procedures Act, which is to say that these executive agencies have taken the power from Congress. Since 1946, we have seen more and more growth of the executive, where we are seeing people take their pet political projects, whether it be gas stoves or bump stocks, and they are writing rules that have the force of law as long as they follow the Administrative Procedures Act. This is unacceptable, particularly when they are outlawing products that American citizens have. So here's Mike talking about the implications of why he brought this forward. This is actually taped, as far as I can tell, before the decision came down. And you guys want to know that he understood there was a broader issue. This is why you don't give up any room for liberties. You have to claw it back.
My job is to stand on anyone's throat that thinks they're going to take our Second Amendment rights away.
So Michael is Cargill versus Garland, and that would be Merrick.
That is correct. So,
and it's about?
So Cargill versus Garland is the bump stock lawsuit case, and this case is not just about bump stocks. This case is about the ATF thinking that they can actually create and write law. So we brought the Cargill versus Garland case to pretty much say, hey, ATF, you cannot create law. That's for Congress. Congress, and we all heard of that song, the Schoolhouse Rock song.
Sure.
How a bill becomes law.
All right. When we're talking about this stuff, he's telling us that Congress has given up their authorities, and he's 100% correct. Most people don't understand how or where, and if you watch this program or listen to it on a regular basis, you know 1946, the APA was the big change. I keep thinking that is one of the pivotal moments in American history when we started losing our republic. But it goes back further than that. In fact, I was sitting with some friends last night talking about this, and this is the kind of things that I talk about over a Sprite while they're having a beer, because I don't know why, but I've decided alcohol is only slowing me down at this point. I'm listening, and we're talking, and I said, do you guys have any idea what happened in 1913? A couple things happened in the 19-teens. We got off the gold standard officially. We also had the Federal Reserve step in. We lost the ability to have our states choose. Our state houses used to be the clearinghouse for American senators. We had a constitutional amendment that changed that. And we also had an income tax that was brought in. The 19-teens was not a good decade for American liberty. And we are feeling those effects now 110 years later. It is one of the reasons why when I tell you that a single election happening in this November, although it is important like every election, it is not going to be the end-all be-all. And we took 110 years probably to slide to this point. We are not going to fix it overnight with a single election. If you have that hope, if someone is selling you the idea that putting one man in office will change it, they are not interested in a constitutional republic. That is not how America works, folks. And we need to be really honest and clear about that. What is supposed to happen is co-equal branches of government. And that leads us to story number 2 today. The Justice Department has decided, unsurprisingly, that they are not going to prosecute Garland for contempt. They have actually, released a memo previously stating that they didn't see any reason to. They refused to provide audio saying it wasn't a crime in order to not obey with Congress. This is what happens when you give executive agencies power that they ought not have. This is what happens when oversight has no meaningful consequence for those who are supposed to experience it. I think I've led on a little bit here that we have an ongoing lawsuit against the FBI. It's not a big deal, but we are in fact suing for video evidence of the FBI at the Hoover Building from their Office of General Counsel, basically lampooning House Republicans for their investigations into the FBI. And we had sources in the room, in the building at that time that have let us know that it was so unserious that even people on the political left that were watching it thought that no adult had reviewed the presentation that was being given. I have asked members of the House to take up this banner and to get it from the FBI using their oversight capabilities, and they're concerned and they are worried because it's possible that the FBI is insulting to these very, very august members of Congress. We have gotten to the point where people are more interested in hearing nice things about themselves than doing real oversight where they step up and they take one for us. Where it's like, yeah, the FBI is talking badly about us. That actually is the whole point of why they need oversight. Instead, they don't want to hear anything that would otherwise sour their reputation. God forbid anyone agree with it. And so they are willing to just let the Republic continue to slide. For everyone who's so interested in what happens in the White House, if you think that a Donald Trump in the White House is going to be an immediate fix, you do not understand how our constitutional republic works. Congress needs to be there, which means you should be also very concerned and maybe even more concerned about what's going on down ballot. Please. Now, the current occupant of the White House, doesn't seem to care about lying to you, is happy to flip-flop, as you well know, on many different policy positions. And this is one that highlights the hypocrisy that exists on the political left, which they don't have to apologize for. Joe Biden has no problem, zero, with coming after people for not obeying a January 6th committee subpoena. But he is certainly not going to go after his own AG. And he's not going to direct the Justice Department to do it. This is the same thing that happened under Obama in 2012 with Eric Holder over the Fast and Furious. This is the playbook. We should hold them to account. At the very least, we should at least be able to throw it in their faces. So this is just an example of Joe Biden specifically going on record saying that he thinks that congressional subpoenas should be adhered to and that there is a criminal act to disobey them. Here we have him saying as much. I understand the audio. There's a helicopter in the background, but you'll be able to understand it.
A message to people who defied congressional subpoenas on the January 6th committee.
I hope that the committee goes after them and holds them accountable.
Should they be prosecuted by the Justice
I do,
Department?
yes.
A message to people who defied.
All right, so you hear it. Do you have a message to people that defy these congressional subpoenas? It's a big deal. He said it. He obviously doesn't believe the things he say. These things, campaigns are about contrast. What we are seeing right now are two standards. We continue to see them. And that contrast is one party keeps hawking the rule of law while actually lying about what they're really interested in. That is worth knowing. We're going to pivot over now and talk about my friends. They have a great piece over at The Loop. If you guys want to check it out, CatholicVote.org is where you go. CatholicVote.org/LOOP is how you get The Loop, or you can read today's Loop. If you want to sign up, just go to the main page. If you want to support them financially for what they're doing, they are 100% behind Trump. They are more than I am when it comes to supporting Donald Trump. They see different angles. We can agree to disagree on certain things. Their endorsement has gone behind it, and the money that they use is going after it today. Catholic Vote, you can follow them on all the social medias. They are continually hammering this garbage president by making people understand that you can be Catholic and you can be pro-abortion, but you can't be both, not at the same time. Follow them at Catholic Vote if you guys are so interested. And let's jump into a good story they wrote, which came out at the end of last week. It was from last week's Loop. A threat to democracy. A federal judge is actually blocking Biden's pro-LGBTQ Title IX changes in 4 different states. This is a good thing because what should happen is there's supposed to be a check and a balance on the executive. This is a Louisiana-based judge, which makes it in the Fifth Circuit, if I'm guessing correctly. I believe that's right. And the Fifth Circuit has continually come down on the side of freedom, has been very aggressively checking the Biden administration on abuses of authority and power, so-called threats to democracy, including things like the vaccine mandate, which is where me and others filed our case in the Southern District of Texas. And then it went forward and got a favorable ruling in the en banc panel of the Fifth Circuit out of New Orleans. This is all good stuff. This is a judge called Terry, Doughty, challenging their ruling that has basically rewritten what the words of Title IX mean. Again, the words have to have meaning. This is what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. They're supposed to adjudicate whether or not the thing that was written means what the administration is trying to interpret it to mean. And they're saying that this is not the case. This judge is saying this. This is a Department of Education trying to rewrite the rules. It went back to April. They're doing so in order to have it out there in front of Pride Month. And this is all about whether or not we can put trans athletes and men identifying as women in the same arena when it comes to sports competitions as females. It's amazing that when we listen to these sort of silly takes, we had a long period of time where the Democrat Party was talking about a so-called Republican war on women. They were talking about disrespect for women. And then they're literally undermining the definition of women. If you think that putting men in women's sports is going to equal fairness for women, it's obviously absurd. And we can all see it. And this judge, at least, is returning a little bit of sanity. The essential ruling is hinging on whether or not we actually believe that gender identity is the same thing as biological sex. They're conflating terms. They continue to do this. This judge is seeing things for what they are. It is, I don't know about a threat for democracy or a threat to democracy. It certainly is abuse of power when you use these executive federal agencies in the rulemaking process. The same thing that Cargill's talking about. This is a direct quote. This case demonstrates the abuse of power by executive federal agencies in the rulemaking process. The separation of powers and the systems of checks and balances exists for a reason in this country. Again, if you're going to adhere to constitutional principles, it's very important that we actually understand certain powers were delineated to certain agencies and or certain branches on purpose. They're supposed to be able to check and balance each other, and you can't do that when Congress cedes its authority. I think the APA should actually be destroyed. I don't think that Congress is allowed to shirk its duty that way. And this is something that we can be very serious about if we want to regain what the constitutional republic looks like. So very good. Now we're going to continue on this LGBT kick because I just found this highly amusing, and I think you might as well. This is an article coming from ABC. LGBT soldiers in Ukraine hope that their service will change attitudes as they rally for rights in Kyiv. And you're going, wait, what? The amazing thing about the people on the political left is that they are fully comfortable embracing ideas in direct conflict with each other. We must stand with Ukraine. Many of you guys will remember that. It's some of the dumbest things you'll see on social media. In fact, if you see a Ukrainian flag on an English-speaking account, what you'll realize is that that is going to come down and give you some of the dumbest takes on pretty much anything. They don't know anything. These are the current thing type people. They're supporting the current thing. First, it was COVID masks and vaccines. Then it was Ukraine. Now we're in the middle of Pride Month, so it's all LGBT. What happens when the current thing doesn't agree with the previous current thing? And that's what we're seeing right now. Apparently, soldiers and members of the military coming out of the Ukrainian armed forces are now protesting and saying that they want better rights. They say we're ordinary people who are fighting in an equal footing with everybody else, but we are deprived of the rights of other people. And what things do they want? They want acknowledgement of same-sex partnerships, because Ukraine, despite the fact that I don't care about it, is probably more conservative than the United States. What did you think they thought? They're actually, other than having that weird guy that's in charge of it who likes to play the piano with his genitals, we're talking about a group of people that sort of still understand basics. And so these folks are marching around with unicorn patches and rainbow flags on their uniforms. It's also interesting to me that they're able to do this in the middle of a war that apparently is for the very survival of their country. They have time to rally for LGBTQ rights. Isn't that weird? I don't know the answer to any of this stuff. Like, foreign policy is not the thing that I want to dig my life into, but do you not find it a bit ironic that the left is a big champion of Ukraine, who is actually more quote unquote backwards than the United States, and yet we are giving them tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars to support what they're doing? It's just, they can't get out of their own way to even agree with themselves. And this is all part of this broader thing. We have to lie to protect the truth. We have to tell you something is happening in Ukraine that is not. We have to believe that Ukraine is this very modern democratic process when in fact they canceled their damn elections and they don't care anything about it. We have to fight for democracy by getting rid of your democracy. We have to fight for LGBTQ rights by actually funding a military that doesn't actually believe in it because it believes in being a military. This is the right answer, by the way. The military shouldn't care who or what you are doing with your genitals. Their big piece there is they want same-sex couples to be able to make decisions for medical emergencies and death things. There's an interesting article, and I'll refer you to Today's Loop for it if you guys want to go find it, that is talking about it's a project called America 2100. And it's all of the sort of slippery slope arguments that people on the political right made going back before the Obergefell decision that legalized gay marriage in America. And they're just showing all of the arguments that were made of this is the problem and this is why we don't want to have this legalized same-sex marriage and what it's going to do to these definitions. Every single one of them continues to come true. The people on the political right that called out this slippery slope were vindicated and are vindicated and continue to be vindicated. And it's not good for America. It's actually the worst thing possible. But it's very interesting that the Ukrainians are now making this argument, and I'm sure we'll get behind it. So there's that. Hooray. I want to keep punching forward. Let me just say you guys can support the program with one of the best things. You know what I found? I actually found a hidden bag when I opened up my Patriot Cooler of Matt Hat Jerky. Go to matthatjerky.com/Kyle. I found the Pinch Your Grandma Reaper Pepper super spicy version of Matt Hat Jerky. And my 3-year-old was badgering me and insisting that I give him some. So I did. And I watched the funniest thing, because I'm a dad. I just think it's funny when my kids insist on doing things that are dumb, and then I just watch them do it. So he ran around yelling about how spicy it was, but then he drank some water and he was fine. You guys can save 20% with promo code Kyle. I think the Father's Day special is over, but 20% for your first order with KYLE. And then once you find what you like, you can set up a subscription and get that 20% on a regular basis. You can set up the frequency of delivery. This stuff is not emergency food that's going to last forever. It's a finite amount of time that it'll last for you. But check out matthadjerky.com/Kyle. I saw a couple of you guys put some big orders in over the weekend. I actually get notified about the orders. I don't know who does it, but I get notifications. So check that thing out. And any of you who are mad about me laughing at my son, we're toughening up a 3-year-old boy who is incredibly cute. He's very, very interesting. He's super weird. He loves spiders. And if he wants to eat some super spicy jerky, then that's what we're going to have him do. And he's going to learn. There's actually a little bit about how dads are required to trick their kids. I call it the dad tax. You guys will see that in our palate cleanser today. I think you'll appreciate it. But men are supposed to toughen their babies up. Women are supposed to nurture and coddle them. And at the end of it, we're supposed to have this well-adjusted person that gets out in the world. If we do it right, which we all kind of fail at. Let's talk about someone that's not well-adjusted, a situation that is actually horrific right now. And it's really problematic. I actually think it's one of the worst things that's going on. This is why Steve Baker is now in Nashville covering down on something that's pretty scary. And if you're not keeping track, you remember the Tranifesto of the Nashville shooter? A female confused, thought she was a male. Some of the writing has been leaked, and we're finding out, like she thought she had an invisible penis and it existed in her mind, and a bunch of other wild, crazy ideas. The real problems is that she went to a therapist, and the therapist didn't report her, as is required. You're a mandated reporter when you work in the therapy realm, when you work in the emergency medical realm, and when you work in law enforcement. You are mandated to go and stop these things. What you're seeing on the screen right now is an article that comes from the Tennessee Star. It says FBI is declining to confirm whether the quote-unquote legacy tokens memo was sent to the Nashville police, which raised the precedent for the destruction of the convent killer's writings. What are we talking about? The Tranifesto are the writings of this confused person, whatever her name was. I don't even remember. Hale. That's right. Audrey Hale. And so she wrote a bunch of crazy stuff. She drew out a bunch of wild things, like a female, by the way. Female handwriting, everything about it is feminine. Even the self-obsession that goes on in there, sort of that teenage narcissism. She was 28 years old, and she went and killed 3 kids and 3 adults because of the reasons that she wrote down in her journal and diary. Meanwhile, what we're seeing is that the Nashville Police Department didn't want to release this. It turns out that there may be a good do-gooder, a sort of suspendable type. The allegation is that it was a lieutenant who has since retired, leaked this stuff because it is of public interest and it is required for people in the public to understand what happened here. We have a right to know, especially if there's an ongoing threat there and what it looks like. And the threat, of course, is that somebody with trans ideology who had this insanity pumped into her head decided to go shoot people out of her own rage for her own treatment and the way that she lived. It's horrific. But what is this legacy tokens nonsense? Because that's where it gets really interesting in my case, I think. The legacy tokens is an article or a position paper that was written by the FBI. So the question was, did it get sent? The FBI refers to confirm it. Well, we'll confirm it right now. Steve Baker shared this with me over the weekend. This is to Chief John Drake. It is to the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department. You're seeing the full piece of the document. It's multiple pages. It was unclassified for official use only, and it specifically talks about protecting legacy tokens. And I had never heard this term before, but it's one of the bullshit terms that the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, the BAU, came up with. And they came up with it in order to describe these things left behind by mass shooters who are involved in horrific acts going back essentially to Columbine. This seems like very weak analysis, by the way. There's nothing academic about it after I read it. It seems dumb. But the whole idea is we have to protect you from the truth by giving you lies. We have to protect the actual truth by lying to you. And all they said is that the Columbine shooters created some tapes. They refer to them as the basement tapes, and they were broadly referred to as this new term, legacy tokens. And the legacy tokens are what someone leaves behind in order to tell people why they did what they did. And rather than letting the public learn from them and see those warning signs and know that when some idiot is down in the basement wearing a black trench coat and filming themselves saying crazy rhetoric, we should actually destroy them so that nobody can see them, so nobody will emulate them. The FBI thinks they need to protect you from the truth because you can't handle the truth. That's essentially what's going on here. And what's really wild is that the press, who has decided to go and print this thing, is now in danger. Those that actually published the information from the so-called Tranifesto, are in danger because there is a chancellor who appears to be like a local judge, from what I can tell. That's the name that they use in Tennessee. This chancellor is now very offended and willing to hold these people in contempt of court and jail them over something that they printed and released that she didn't want released because she believes in the legacy token idea. Prior restraint has been roundly rejected by the United States Supreme Court. If anybody wants to go back and see how deeply the U.S. actually believes in the freedom of the press, and when we used to believe in this, when the ACLU used to get involved, New York Times versus the United States, 1971, tells us that even classified material that can have a quote-unquote grave damage to American national security, you can actually print that stuff. And they did. This was the release of the Pentagon Papers. This is how American, quote unquote, democracy is actually supposed to survive. It's not the real version, or it is the way the Washington Times sort of like lampoons itself. Democracy dies in darkness means you expose things to the truth, not you like curate this garbage narrative and you hide things from people. It's pretty incredible. And I say that because I'm actually incredulous. I cannot believe that a federal judge or a state judge in a place like Tennessee, which is quite red, is going to side on behalf of you can't know this because it's dangerous. This is literally the you can't handle the truth argument. And it already has been adjudicated by the Supreme Court, and it's not even recent. It's 50 years ago and change. You don't have the right to keep things from the public. The government doesn't get to do this nanny job on us. That's not why they're there. They don't exist for this, but it does bring me to another story, which I find quite interesting. Again, this one coming from CNN. We're broadly getting to the point where you can't have the truth. We have to tell you lies in order to protect you from it. The Surgeon General of the United States, who you guys have seen, he's this guy, Vivek Murthy. He wants to put a Surgeon General's warning on social media apps. How far does the nanny state go? The nanny state goes as far as it's willing to get compliance from the citizens. Do you need the government to tell you what is good and what is not good? I know there are arguments about some antisocial behaviors that cannot be tolerated, but there are also arguments to say that freedom is supposed to be dangerous. That means that we're allowed to own weapons, and some people may use them inappropriately. Luckily, if you're like me and many others, you carry a weapon so that you could try to mitigate that threat to your family. That's the deal. The deal is some people will abuse their freedoms, and we have to be in position to stop them. That means you enable law enforcement where able, and private citizens more likely to stop evil when it rears its head. You cannot stop people from doing things that are bad. We learned this during Prohibition. If you outlaw things, if you put a warning label on it, if you put it on cigarettes, it actually leads to more smoking. The only way that you actually do this is with moral pressure, social pressure, which used to be done in things like churches. The Surgeon General wants to put this social media warning so that children, he thinks it's an urgent action requirement. There's a mental health crisis among young people. He called it an emergency. They always want to frame things as emergent, as a crisis, so they can act with government authorities. Because you'll notice that these words are very specific. In the same way that it matters what the law says, they are always trying to frame things that are not medical emergencies in terms of medical emergencies. So, of course, he's pointing to studies that are coming from the American Medical Association, things that have been published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, talking about how teens are spreading this. They have more depression. So now, because people are teenagers, you remember being a teenager, anybody? Were you not depressed sometimes? You didn't know what it was called, maybe. Maybe you did. A lot of teens are depressed. Why? Because they have all kinds of hormones going on, and they're trying to figure out what their place in the world is. And that's a rough place to be. Being a teenager is difficult. It sucks for most people. And the way that you overcome it, I agree. It's not by being on social media apps. They didn't have them when I was a kid. You went out and played sports, and you hung out with your friends, and you kind of figured it out. But that also, does have some actual effects. Maybe those sports should actually have males being males and females being females instead of women getting beaten down by crappy dudes who are able to outperform them. Maybe that. This government is at odds with itself all the time because it's constantly trying to balance this stupid hierarchy. And one of them is saying that they want more control over you. But the other one is that they want this freedom for like the most freakish and weird people. It's a strange time to be alive, folks. I'll just say that. We need to not be giving Surgeon General warnings on social media apps. Not because you shouldn't let your kids on social media apps. You shouldn't. Of course you should limit that sort of thing. But it's not the government's business. That's the biggest hammer coming for the most individual freedom. It's your job as a parent to deal with this stuff. You want to teach your kids how to do things? Give them spicy beef jerky and throw them across the parking lot, which I'll show you in a little bit as well. You don't ask the government to make safety warnings on this kind of stuff. It's the antithesis of being an American, by the way. It is the least free thing. All right, I want to pivot over to something else that's been going on. This continues to be a stupid part of my existence, and it actually does cause a fair amount of stress. This woman, Julie Kelly, who you guys have heard about, I don't want to dwell on who Julie Kelly is other than I don't think she's credible. She is being used as a tool. And so there's a really, really good article that we're going to reference. But first, I wanted to show you why I'm bringing it up. I don't start this crap. I don't care. June 15th, over the weekend, when I was off social media, we get this thing. She says, Trump's lawyers argue that the inclusion of the deadly force policy in FBI plan does constitute authorization to use deadly force. The quote-unquote suspendables are hardest hit. And then she actually goes and quotes a position paper written by attorneys and trying to move the needle for their client. They're doing the right thing. Now, if you guys want to understand what this is all about, not what Julie Kelly is doing, by the way, she's a tool being used by the Trump campaign. And it's pretty amazing. She's a tool being used. I hope she understands what she's doing. Her error was she decided to make it personal. Again, we can agree to disagree. She's wrong, but she can agree to disagree with me, and I'm not going to worry about this. But she actually made it personal. She claimed that we were Fed operatives, that Garrett O'Boyle is not actually on suspension for over 21 months now. It's getting pretty disgusting. And so here's what I'm going to recommend. Go to Bill Shipley's Substack and listen. If you don't listen to anything else, listen to today's article. Listen to the entirety of it, which I cannot cover. But I listened to it last night. There's a play function. If you actually download the Substack app, you can actually hit play and some AI lady will read you the entirety of the article. And it's almost all correct, except saying things like Mar-a-Lago are jacked up. There's some abbreviations in there like SC, which you'll see. That's special counsel. And if you have that, and MAL is Mar-a-Lago as well. Those are the only abbreviations that really jacks up. I want you to understand, look at Bill Shipley's statement, which I'm going to show here, and then I'm going to show a little bit more of his article. It's almost like I wrote this because I remember saying exactly this to you. Do you remember that when you are dealing with a court document, it's incredibly important to remember who it is that is the audience of that document? And here we go. To understand, I'm quoting Bill Shipley right now. Bill Shipley is a retired assistant United States attorney. He was a federal prosecutor. His wife was an FBI agent and also retired. He now does defense on a volunteer basis for January 6ers. If you want to support somebody that's doing good work, trying to save justice, if you want to put it in that way, Bill Shipley is one of the people doing it. He's also representing guys like Steve Baker. He is a friend of the suspendables in so much as he does the right thing because he knew that it was needed. Here we go. Quote, to understand why the Trump defense responded the way it did, which I cover next, it is necessary to keep in mind that the defense is addressing an audience of one. What did I tell you? Specifically, a federal district judge who was once a federal prosecutor in that Florida court, a response that parroted the political narrative that arose on and after May 21st is not a legal response. Special counsel Smith was asked for conditions of pretrial release to be modified and then needed to address the Bail Reform Act under which the conditions were imposed, blah, 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 blah. Folks, what is going on here with this whole deadly force was authorized? It's actually very important. But unfortunately, people like Julie Kelly, who don't know what she's talking about, she missed the point. She is being used as a tool. What they did is they seeded information. And I have fairly good information that the campaign actually asked Julie Kelly to put this stuff out in public. She wasn't expecting a fact check from guys like me, and nobody asked me. And if you'd asked me to keep my mouth shut, I probably wouldn't do it anyway. So that's probably good. She went out there and weighed in on something she doesn't understand because the Trump team asked her to do so. She was pushing forward a narrative. What they were doing was advancing two different things. One is a legal strategy and one is a PR strategy. The PR strategy is related to campaigning. They got the special counsel to bite on the PR strategy and make arguments that are inherently political in this court. Do you understand why that's a failure on the special counsel's part? They've actually exposed that special counsel Jack Smith is in fact playing politics, and they did so by manipulating people who are not that bright like Julie Kelly. She was able to push forward something that was false. They addressed it in terms of release, and then they are able to go out and make a very important argument, and this is what Bill Shipley says. The argument that is being made and what they baited Jack Smith into, this is the title of the Substack post, folks. It says, the Trump defense in Florida continues to score political points by baiting. What does baiting mean? They lured them into a trap. Special counsel Smith into foolish efforts. Okay, and then he puts, if quote-unquote journalists could distinguish between the actual criminal defense effort and the defense-inspired political narrative, there would be less confusion for real people. I want you to be understanding what is happening here. They are doing something very fun. The Trump campaign is not dumb, And the fact that they are using their legal means to discredit the special counsel is not a problem. The problem is that people like Julie Kelly made it personal because she thought somehow what she was, arriving with this bombshell revelation, because it got 10 million views, it decides she thinks that means it's true. The size of your audience doesn't. And I will make one more argument to you. When you are constantly punching down to small social media accounts like my friend Garrett O'Boyle and making obnoxious claims about it, out of nowhere when we've let it drop, because I don't give a shit about this, I really don't, other than she's being dumb. She's attacking my friends. She's showing a thing that I'm going to call the credibility gap. Julie Kelly acknowledges that she doesn't have the credibility of Bill Shipley, who spent 20 plus years doing this job, of me or Garrett or Steve, who have thousands and thousands of hours and hundreds of actual FBI search warrant administrations and other operations. She has no credibility there. So she, with 640,000 followers and another, 135,000 people on Substack or whatever she's got, these followers, she's trying to use them, but she's going after people that are so much smaller. Who cares what we think, other than she knows that we're right. She knows that we have credibility in this range and she does not. So she's made it personal, and that's why it got personal. And screw her. This is what's actually going on. Like I said, being used as a tool. Instead of the legal defense that has been used in a manner in which the search warrant was executed, including the use of force policy, it is evidence of the FBI DOJ's quote unquote bad faith in carrying out the warrant. When Trump's legal team is making legal arguments, they do so on the legal grounds. When you see the PR team making PR arguments, they're doing something different. What they've been able to do is they baited Jack Smith into the PR arena, showing that the prosecution is in fact political. And by doing that, they're going to be able to argue that even if the Fourth Amendment search is actually ruled unfair, there are ways to save the evidence by saying that the agents acted in good faith. Shipp goes deep into this. I believe the case is called Leon. You guys will have to read and listen to his Substack. Read or listen, take your pick. But the bad faith argument is what they are trying to hammer home. And they are luring Jack Smith into making the argument that helps them substantiate the bad faith argument, so that if they can get the search warrant thrown out on Fourth Amendment grounds, then they also can show that the agents acted in bad faith by showing up armed, and that it was inherently different conduct than what we saw when they went after Biden. It's actually quite brilliant. It doesn't surprise people to say, oh, I see. The Trump legal team is making an argument, and they are using the two things that they have. They are using the court of public opinion, and then they are also using an actual court with a judge. They avoid the public opinion garbage when they are making legal arguments to an audience of one with a judge. But they did bait and get the PR machine going so that Jack Smith is attacking them. And it's very smart, because it shows that the streams are crossed, as long as they can keep theirs clean, which they did, and Shipp actually lays out the arguments being made in court versus those that are being made on Truth Social. They actually got Jack Smith to try to say that Trump should be remanded and there should be a bigger gag order, and all of that is good because it's antithetical to the First Amendment. This is smart work. Julie Kelly is not. She's actually just a tool in this case. I want you guys to have a clear understanding of it. That's the end of it. There are major problems at the FBI. Nobody wants to defend them, certainly not me, somebody who lost a lot for it. And neither does Steve Friend or Steve Baker, who's been arrested by the FBI, or Bill Shipley, who is going head to head with the FBI every single day in court. We don't want to do this, but we are going to be righteous and fair. We will tell you the actual truth. We're not going to give you lies to defend the truth because you can't handle it. You can. That's why you listen to this program. Feel free to put that in the comments below if you guys don't like what I'm about. Let's give you some more examples. On Friday, I reported to you that a member of the Washington field office from the FBI, which is my former office, and you guys know I've got a lot of sources and contacts there, they have apparently hired a brand new agent who doesn't meet the narcotics policy, and they were able to conflate the marijuana policy, which says 1 year clean and not using marijuana, and allow someone who is a former or recovering heroin addict, a hard drug addict. Now, there's something different about junkies than those who smoke some pot. I'm not a big fan of any drugs. That won't surprise many of you. That's how I ended up with a security clearance and being an FBI agent. But there is a massive difference in the type of people that I will trust when it comes to whether they use heroin or they use marijuana on a regular basis. I have many family members that are big fans of it. I don't agree with it. I don't want it around me, but so what? Heroin is a real problem, specifically for the Washington field office. It may not be something that you know, but I know very, very intimately how bad it is when you have an agent that gets addicted to heroin and starts stealing out of the evidence locker, which is a thing that happened at Washington Field specifically. Now they have a recovering heroin junkie working for this law enforcement agency that enforces federal, heroin statutes. Are we insane right now? Yes. They are constantly going for the lowest, the bottom of the barrel. You hear Chris Wray talking about how they have amazing recruiting numbers, which he said in front of Congress. They do it by dropping the standards, the physical fitness standards, the sexual moral standards, which used to exist and do not anymore. And now those people can be compromised, or maybe they just don't care, which is why you get this LGBTQ garbage. And then the last thing is they've actually started to underride the national security implications. Do you think that person is going to be a target for foreign recruitment the minute that they have an opportunity to find out who it is? And they will, because the Chinese have hacked our OPM and they find these types of documents out. This is such scary, stupid stuff. And I'm going to give you some evidence of what happens when you drop your standards, which is not new. This is a story that many of you may have seen if you're following social media. This broke out all over the place on True Social. A state trooper working in Alabama with a quote unquote checkered FBI past was convicted of child rape. Are you appalled yet? Because I'm disgusted by this guy. Here's the story of who this person is. His name is Christopher Bauer. I didn't know him, so he's 44 degrees. He's roughly 44 years old, roughly my age. Started off as a local police officer, from what I can gather, in Montgomery, Alabama. And then he parlayed that into an FBI career. During his time at the FBI, he was kicked out of the FBI for having sex in a Bureau vehicle because the investigators at the Internal Affairs Unit for the FBI are absolutely dog shit. They are terrible at what they do. They're not good at it. They've positively adjudicated that Garrett O'Boyle either did or didn't do something, and they've kept him 21 months without a paycheck because they can't actually prove the thing that they think they did, but they testified to Congress that they did. This guy apparently was investigated for holding a knife to the throat of another FBI employee. For a year, he apparently forcibly raped her and or had some sort of coercion to have sex with her. She said she lost her hair. She dropped a bunch of weight. She was unable to be substantiated. So there was some sort of mutual or consensual thing going on. Who knows what sort of weird, freakish kinks people have. It turns out they actually used to get that stuff out of the way when they would do the polygraphs. And now when you start letting people in who do heroin or they have weird sexual perversions like holding knives to their partner's throats, you're going to get this asshole out there doing this thing. And eventually he was kicked out of the FBI because they were able only to show some of the malfeasance. And then he forged a letter because he's a scumbag, and he forged a letter and sent it off to the Alabama State Police, and he was hired. The letter was faked, and it said that he had 10 years of credible service or creditable service and that he was eligible for rehire. The FBI has said that this is false. I'm sure that it was. But he was put in a position of authority with the state police because they did a crappy job doing a background. There are multiple failures here that happen every level. The feds failed, and then you see that the state police failed. They hired this guy on, and he was in a position to rape an 11-year-old girl. He was convicted of forcible sodomy, a couple of other really awful things. I hope this guy has a really, really rough rest of his life. But here's the thing that I don't wish for, because I find this truly disgusting. The idea that we've accepted that prison equals prison rape in this country, prison is supposed to be the actual punishment. I do not want that. You want to feed the guy into a wood chipper? Sure, pass the law. It should actually matter what we do with him. But sending them into a place and then hoping that the inmates take care of justice means that we have actually ceded the righteousness of the cause that we are involved in. Do you guys get that? It's not a good look to say. I keep seeing people this. The idea, like prison rape is horrific because there are people that don't belong there in prison. Not a lot. But that's not what we send people to prison for. So I'm seeing a little of you in the chat saying it. I'm telling you, if you're rooting for prison will sort it out, this is the wrong way to go. This is not a moral argument, and there's no righteousness in that. So I'll stand against you on those. We can also agree to disagree. Just telling you, I don't think that's right. How about we actually have our legislators make the punishment fit the crime in a righteous way? That is the actual answer in this case, and that is the thing that we should try to stand behind. All right. All of this is going to culminate with the weird lies. This is not news to most of you folks. Here, let me actually throw over here. I will make a recommendation. Boom. You guys can support our program if you want. Talking about people that want to be righteous. Mike Lindell, he's got a mustache. He wears a cross. The MyPillow. You guys can go to mypillow.com/Kyle. I just used their towels this morning. They are righteous. Those are righteous for sure. They do the right job. 50% off, up to 50% off using our promo code KYLE. You'll get the same deal as anybody else. If you want to go and use anybody else's code, it'll be the same as mine. So you might as well use mine if you're listening to this program. We're smaller than them, and we appreciate your support. And we appreciate that we can help support Mike Lindell doing the things that he's doing. He has a legal offense fund, by the way. I actually like that the most. I hate legal defense fund. It means that we're losing. Conservatives need to be progressive in trying to gain these grounds back. Guys like Mike Cargill did it. So if you guys want to support people like Mike Lindell, you can go and buy their products, or you can even donate to their legal offense fund. Use our promo code, KYLE. Let's do that one. Okay, you guys ready to go? This is where it's all leading up to, because this is why I had the thumbnail the way I did. Let me show the thumbnail real quick. There it is. We don't know what the subject looks like. We don't know what the suspect looks like. By the way, I always say subject because that's how the FBI uses them. Subject of investigation, not suspect in a crime. You know why? Because a lot of the stuff I did was not involved in crimes. They were quote unquote threats. We were going after so-called terrorists, which is really weird. So we're very specific about that language. Suspect is different than subject, but that's what I always use. This is one that just happened close to home. This happened in Round Rock, Texas. It's right across the way from me. It's 15 minutes away. A place called Old Settlers Park, a place that I have been. It's an okay park. A couple things bother me. 2 are dead, 14 are wounded after a shooting at a Juneteenth celebration in Texas. It's hot. It's crappy out when people are out there and they get into a fight. I'm very upset that this media has gotten fully involved in trying to censor information from us because they don't think we can handle it. Tell me that you're racist by pretending to be not racist, because that's how this is. This is a racist article. This one is coming from CBS. It says Round Rock Police Chief Alan Banks said the shooting was sparked after an altercation between 2 groups. Oh, there were just 2 groups. Were these 2 families? Were these 2 rival gangs? How come we don't have more information? I guarantee you, if this was a white nationalist group, you would know more things. And that bothers me in a big way. And then I highlighted at the bottom here. Police said they're searching for a suspect in connection with the shooting. Are you ready for the description of the suspect? Here we go. He's described as approximately 5'7" with a thin build and short dreadlocks. I mean, I know that you're telling us he's black, probably. But why aren't you telling us he's black? Why not? Why is that a thing you're doing? Why are you hiding that from us? Is it because you have a black police chief who looks like this, that had a big spotlight in February in the local pieces and the Chamber of Commerce talking about Black History Month? That he's an advocate, an affiliate. He's a former vice president of the Black History Month Society in that little town. This is a town that has less than 10% of its population are black, by the way, Round Rock, Texas. 120,000 is the population. U.S., generally speaking, is roughly 13% black. So they are less than the national average. It's always interesting to me that when I see these places, and Round Rock by all means is roughly conservative. I don't actually think that's true anymore, but that's what it actually shows up as on the map. It's roughly a red area, if not a pink area. Why do they all have black police chiefs? I'm sure there are fantastic black police officers who should be black police chiefs, no doubt. I just don't understand how this group that continues to say that we need to have our police force reflect the population, and then it doesn't reflect the population even a little bit. It's really weird. I looked up Dallas, by the way, too. They have a Hispanic police chief, and they are not that Hispanic, although there are plenty of Hispanic people in Texas. It's just weird to see. I read some of his stuff. The sad thing is this guy doesn't say bad things, but everybody is going to be suspect when you put out your garbage narrative that you're not even going to name the race, which is the number one way that we identify people. We not want to know age, we want to know skin color, and we want to know physical appearance in general. Physical appearances, are they fat? Are they thin? Are they athletic? Are they tall? Are they short? Do they have dark skin? Do they have light skin? Are they wearing neon pink hair? Can you give me something? Short dreadlocks? You're kind of telling me, but give me a break, dude. Why are we doing this? And then he's got this garbage sort of take on things. He says, can you recall a specific moment in Black history that had a profound impact? This guy started with the police department in 1992, so he's obviously a little bit older than I am. He was hired by Round Rock in 2014 as the police chief, so he's been there for a while. The most impactful moments that he had were the "I Had a Dream" speech by Martin Luther King Jr. Tell me that you don't know anything about anything, that you just went for the shortest thing. And the other one was Nelson Mandela being released from prison and becoming president. That's what he said. It's the most generic garbage, right? He's a Round Rock Black History Organizer member. How about some really, really academic thing? How about some austere piece or some sort of interesting piece of information that many people don't know, using that platform you have as a police chief when they're interviewing about this garbage to say something of value? No, not going to do it. And he's got a white wife that he calls out and uses that as a badge of honor. I've got mixed race kids. How about you just say, I just have a wife and I love my children. They just happen to be mixed race because that's who it is that I care about. Why don't we stop looking at race? They don't do this stuff. It's my big problem. That's why I love that Morgan Freeman quote about how about we just stop looking at people by race, except when we're trying to find criminals. People, come on now. You can't give me that description. He's got dreadlocks and then like leave it. If you guys don't watch Austin Fleckus, he has a podcast called Fleckus Talks. It's one of my wife's favorites. And he's constantly talking about the euphemisms that we use to hide race. It is a bigger way of telling us that you're racist by trying to ignore whether or not you're actually being racist. And that's really sad to me. I don't want it. I think it's dumb. All right, we're about to wrap up here. I got a couple things of housekeeping. I want to say thanks to all of you, our listeners, who always come through for us. There is the picture that we discussed with Steve Friend on Friday. What is that a picture of? It's Antonin Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg on a flippin' elephant. Look at you all coming up with the picture right there. There's some dude who's riding the elephant on its head, and then you've got two Supreme Court justices, one big heavyset guy and one tiny little wasting away cancer lady in the background riding on a damn elephant in what looks like India. Hilarious. You guys had this before the end of the show. You guys are the best. So thank you for putting it out there. I've actually got some more stuff we'll cover on tomorrow. I want to talk about the fundraiser in Los Angeles. I've got some really good sort of debunking media narrative. It's more along this line. So I hope you'll join me so we can continue this conversation about the shit they're lying about, because there's no other way to call it. They're just trying to shovel us. They're like, isn't this tasty? And we're like, no, it tastes like poop. Stop it. All right, let's do let's do the palate cleanser, because I have two of them. It was Father's Day yesterday, and a happy belated Father's Day to all of you. We talked about it on Friday, but we'll talk about it again. Remember, your job as a father is to do things like the dad tax, to teach your kids about the truth in the world. And the truth is that sometimes people will scam you, and they will do this. If you're listening on the audio, you're going to miss out on this great little version of the dad tax, but all of you who are watching will understand what I'm saying. That is the dad tax, the old monkey see, monkey do. When your kid starts trying to make you, is following your movements, you just do it in a way that is advantageous. And she learned a valuable lesson. And that girl did the right thing, which is laugh, because dads are fun and dads are silly and they do funny things like this to you. Plus, that dad just got 2 candy bars. I'm guessing he gave her the one that he had, but he certainly laughed at her. I do this stuff. If you're not eating your kids' ice cream and their pancakes and their waffles and their chocolate bars and taking a little bit of it, the dad tax is a real thing. Make sure you guys do it. All right, here's a little taste of what happens when you don't give specific information. If you tell your husband to do something, he'll do it. But if you tell your husband to do something more vague, then they will oftentimes find their own interpretation of it. This is really fun stuff. This came from Instagram. I don't know who these people are, but I 100% get behind these dads. This is what I'm going to call Shuffle Baby Board. Here we go.
What are our husbands doing? Okay, I have to see what they're doing.
So it's 30 by 27.
What are you doing?
What?
What are you doing? I thought you were taking them on a walk.
Kind of. Don't worry about it.
No, but honestly, I thought you were going on a walk.
You said go outside.
Why is everything always a game with these two?
Everyone else is like chilling, taking a nap.
Do you have any idea?
And then it's like a chalk. You think they're gonna paint something on the sidewalk?
Are you painting something?
I'm not gonna paint the driveway.
Okay. What in the world?
A line? Oh, that looks like a 2. You're so right.
0, 0.
Nice. Go Red! Oh.
That's
so
a
when...
lot. Go, stop, stop.
Can you do it? You're gonna bump Red out!
All right, folks, it's baby board, shuffleboard. I don't know. It looks like curling with buggies. What's better than that? Dad's having fun with their kids. Kids may or may not be participating in it. They're getting to roll. Everybody's safe. The wives are amused. They're actually able to place bets upstairs. This is a total win. This is what happens when you give a little bit of flexibility and we have fun being dads. And yeah, my friends would totally do that kind of thing. Although I think we would want a longer board. And I've done it with an incline. My buddy and I actually used to do a thing. My oldest daughter, we put her on this train, and we would roll her down this track that would spit her out into the street, and then she would run down this hill, and he would try to angle it such that he could actually spit her out and have her come at me at a very high rate of speed. She was probably moving like 15 miles an hour by the time she got to me, and I would scoop her off this like plastic thing that had the wobbly wheels, and we were like 80 yards apart. It was really good fun. We were just sending her down the chute and trying to line it up and get her where we wanted to go. You got to play out the curve of the, just like putting, you know, we were just doing it on the curve of the asphalt. Anyway, dads for fun. Guys, I hope you guys appreciate all of that. I want to say thanks to our great listeners that give us the 5-star reviews. Here's a really nice one from Prince Feet. Prince, Prints Feet. I don't know if you guys picked these names or not, by the way. 5 stars, inspirational and terrifying, not just a peek behind the curtain. Kyle throws the door wide open to show the inner workings of the FBI and our corrupted police state. That I got misplaced, by the way. I can tell where it goes. Smart, thoughtful, and real. I'm glad to know there are people like this who are fighting for what's good about this country. You know what's good about this country? Truth, fairness, righteousness, doing things the right way for the right reason. If you guys want to support my friends over at Catholic Vote again, I'll also say you can pick up this copy of the book, store.catholicvote.org, and you can get a copy of For God, Country, and Sanity. That's what it's all about, is it not? Faith, family, and freedom, God, country, sanity. Let's do all those things. We will see you guys again tomorrow morning, right? We're going to do a little bit more of this stuff. This should be a fun week. Appreciate all of you joining us. And make sure you share the show. Make sure you've liked it. Make sure you have joined us on Rumble when you get a chance in that live chat. We'll catch you again in the morning, 0930, if you want to do it live, Eastern Time, 8:30 here, Texas, America. God bless you. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.